far from the core of the galaxy, in a quiet and forgotten region of space. Its Galactic Council's attention turned to a strange whisper that had no clear source. Rumors of a hidden human project. Something massive, something secret. This area, called the Black Drift, was a cold and silent graveyard of rocks and ice, long abandoned and of no value. Yet the whispers kept coming. The small, independent traders claimed they had seen strange lights in the distance, beams that vanished the moment someone tried to follow them. Council probes were sent, but they returned with empty data or vanished entirely. Most council members dismissed the stories as nonsense until one senior official, a cautious and sharp-eyed alien named Veltor from the Traylon species, decided to investigate further. Veltor had survived 3 border wars and believed every rumor, no matter how small, carried some truth. He quietly authorized a stealth probe mission under the name Routine Drift Mapping, hiding the true purpose from even his closest allies. While the council busied itself with trade laws and political debates, Veltor's probe flew into the Black Drift with silent engines and advanced scanners. Days passed. Then a strange spike appeared on the long-range sensor, grid and energy signature that did not match anything known to the council. It was brief but sharp, like a spark in the dark. Veltor's eyes narrowed. Something was there. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a secret facility deep under the Arctic ice, a small group of elite human scientists and engineers stood inside a command room, glowing with soft blue light. In the center of a large bay rested a sleek, black structure, shaped like a spearhead, covered in plating, so advanced that it looked like liquid metal. This was Vanguard Humanity's most secret creation. It was not just a warship, but a self-aware machine built to move unseen, strike if needed, and vanish before any enemy could respond. Its power source came from a new form of dark energy, fusion, something humanity had discovered by accident during deep space particle experiments. They knew the rest of the galaxy would never allow them to possess such technology, so they had hidden it. Only a handful of Earth's leaders even knew of its existence. Commander Elias Monroe, a calm man with tired eyes and a voice that never rose in panic, stood at the helm. "Is she ready?" he asked softly. A young technician nodded. "Systems green across the board. Vanguard is online." Outside, under the icy sky, a hidden elevator began to shift. Slowly, Vanguard began to rise, its massive body wrapped in light-bending armor. At the same time, Veltor's probe continued its quiet search, weaving between asteroid fields and scanning space, layer by layer. It found nothing until it passed close to a seemingly dead moon. For a brief second, all its systems shut down. No warning, no damage, just silence. Then everything returned. The probe tried to send its data back, but the signal was blocked. Veltor frowned. He replayed the data again and again, watching the strange drop in power. And then he noticed something else. One frame, nearly invisible, showed a shadow against the moon's surface. It had a shape, not natural, not asteroid. He leaned forward. "Mark this location," he ordered. "Send a second probe." But before the new probe could be launched, the first one vanished. No explosion, no drift, no signals, just gone. The council began to take notice. Veltor was summoned by the high table and asked to explain his actions. He chose his words carefully, revealing only that something unknown had taken one of their best probes. Most members laughed or accused him of wasting resources. Leia, few looked worried. Arth, Commander Monroe, watched the stars through the viewing screen. Vanguard floated just outside Earth's orbit, fully cloaked, its systems humming quietly. It had not been built for war but for warning. Humanity remembered too well how the Council had delayed aid during Earth's hardest years. They remembered the cold silence when Earth had asked for help during the Martian plague. Humans had learned to survive alone, and now they had something that made sure they could. "Any activity near the drift?" Monroe asked. "Stacombe in command." Lieutenant Cyril Park answered. "Yes, sir." A probe was destroyed near Sector K-29. "Council markings." Monroe nodded. "Then they're coming." Back in the council chambers, Veltor watched as a map lit up with blinking dots. New scans, patrols being sent toward the drift. It had begun. He leaned back in his seat, whispering to himself, "They've built something. I don't know what, but we are not ready for it." In the darkness of space, far beyond what any telescope could see, Vanguard waited, silent, cold, and ready to show the galaxy that humanity, once overlooked and dismissed, had not just survived. They had built a ghost in the stars, in the cold darkness near a dying red dwarf star. Something ancient and powerful stirred. Silent for years, but never asleep, Vanguard, the hidden human warship, slowly came to life. Its hull, black as space itself, reflected nothing, hiding perfectly among the drifting asteroids that circled the dead system. For nearly 2 decades, Vanguard had remained in deep sleep, waiting for the moment it was needed. Now, systems blinked, on one after another, and the deep hum of energy stirred through its core as its AI awakened. The AI, known simply as Archon, did not think like a human, but it understood its purpose: defend Earth at all costs, reveal itself only when necessary, and strike only when survival demanded it. In the command chamber, hidden deep within the ship's armored heart, holographic displays lit up slowly. Commander Elias Monroe stepped inside with quiet footsteps, followed by Lieutenant Cyril Park and 2 technicians. "Status report," he said. Archon's calm voice echoed across the room. "All systems functional. Stealth field at 97%. Energy core stable. No external threats detected within range." Monroe looked out toward the dark star ahead. "Why did you wake up?" he asked. "External scan detected multiple long-range probes within 10 light minutes," Archon replied. "One probe attempted passive scan. Signal intercepted. Data corrupted." Monroe didn't smile, but his eyes narrowed. "The council is getting nervous." Cyril spoke next. "Should we move?" The commander shook his head. "No, not yet. Let them wonder." Meanwhile, at the edge of the drift, an alien scout ship crept forward through the rocks, cued by Captain Norvikel, a Lorian veteran with 6 decades of space patrol under his belt. His ship, small and fast, was equipped with stealth tech that only the council's top agents used. He didn't trust Veltor, but he respected his instincts. Nor believed something was out there, something big, and he had come to find it. He didn't know that Vanguard had already noticed him. Inside the warship, Archon tracked the ship's motion with no emotion. "Identified craft approaching," it reported. "Shall I engage cloaking enhancements?" "Let them come closer," Monroe said. "I want them to see just a glimpse." As the alien ship drew near one of the large asteroids, its sensors began to glitch. Minor errors at first, then full disorientation. Nor cursed softly. "What's wrong with the nav?" he barked to his pilot. The ship spun slightly off course, then corrected, but the stars seemed wrong. The pilot looked up. "Sir, there's something here." On one of the monitors, for a single second, a shape appeared, dark, sharp, and impossibly large, then disappeared. The crew froze. Nora stared. "Pack us out now." But it was too late. Every system on the alien ship shut down. Lights flickered, controls went dead, and silence fell over the ship like a blanket. Inside Vanguard, Monroe gave a single nod. "That's enough. Restore their systems." Archon pulsed a soft wave of energy, and on the alien vessel, everything came back to life at once. Norvikel gasped as the lights returned. "Mark this location he said quickly. We've seen something, ... something real. They turned the ship around and disappeared into the rocks, heading back to Council space as fast as possible. Back in the high hall of the Galactic Council, Veltor stood as the room argued. Some believed the footage Nor brought back was fake. Others, especially the older species who had known war, believed it without question. Few called for peace talks with Earth. Most wanted answers first. One thing was certain: there was something near the drift, and it wasn't a pirate base or a lost colony. It was something made with precision, something built for war, but hidden with the skill of a ghost. While they argued, Earth remained silent. No message, no warning, no denial, just silence. In the shadows of the red dwarf system, Vanguard moved ever so slightly to a new position, choosing its angle carefully. Archon spoke. We have been seen. Should I prepare for departure? Monroe walked slowly toward the main console. Yet, let the council think. Let fear do our work for now. It's deep in space, near a planet with no name. An old human satellite picked up a new signal coded in brief. It was a single pulse, the kind used in old Earth history during wartime. It meant only one thing: Stage 1 activated. On Earth, far below the Arctic base, in secure bunkers, military leaders began quiet discussions. The humans had never intended to attack. They had built Vanguard for protection, but now that the galaxy was watching, they had to be ready for anything. Vanguard's awakening had changed the game, and the stars no longer felt so distant. As the council scrambled to understand what they had seen, and whispers turned into warnings, the humans waited in silence. Vanguard, patient and deadly, stayed hidden in plain sight, watching, thinking, and preparing. Its weapons were not armed. Its shields were not raised. But everyone who had seen it knew this was no ordinary ship. A was a symbol, a warning, and it had only just begun to wake. The Galactic Council met in a sealed chamber as tension rose. Across the galaxy, every screen in the room displaying distorted images, fragments of data, blurred shapes from deep within the black drift, pieces of footage that didn't make sense, but all pointed to one thing: something big, something human, and something powerful was hiding there. Captain Norvakel's ship had returned, damaged, but intact. And his report was brief, yet chilling. His systems had failed. A massive shadow had passed across the stars, and he felt watched by something beyond comprehension. Some council members laughed nervously, saying the images were tricks of space or reflections, but others were not so quick to dismiss the threat, especially Veltor, who had warned them from the beginning. He stood, his long fingers tapping the glowing table, and spoke in a low voice. This is not a myth. We are being watched, and we don't understand what by. Meanwhile, far from the council's halls, a group of independent detoners, known for collecting restricted information, leaked a short visual burst across the galactic neta. Frame-by-frame breakdown of an alien probe's last transmission, slowed down and sharpened to reveal a brief silhouette. Tall and sharp-edged, surrounded by faint light and an energy pattern never recorded before. The file was quickly erased from most channels, but not before it spread across black markets and secret forums. Billions saw it, and the question began to spread like wildfire. What had the humans created in the dark? On Earth, inside the Arctic Command Base, Commander Elias Monroe and Lieutenant Sierra Park stood before a glowing map of the outer sectors. Red dots blinking as new patrol ships from different council species started sweeping the drift. "They've seen too much," Sierra whispered. Monroe nodded slowly. "We wanted time. They're forcing our hand." Vanguard, still hidden near the dead red dwarf star, began adjusting position again, quietly shifting behind a larger asteroid cluster. The ship made no sound, cast no reflection, and its stealth tech bent space just enough to remain invisible to most scans. But Vanguard had something more, an ancient pulse system designed to reveal itself only when needed. Archon, the AI, spoke. Gently, several fleets have entered outer proximity range. Shall I project a false energy trail? Monroe considered. No. Give them a glimpse. Just enough. With silent agreement, Vanguard powered up one of its rear emitters and released a wave of exotic particles, undetectable to most, but strong enough to tickle advanced sensors. As Council ships passed through that area, their scanners picked up an energy field they couldn't trace. A confusion followed, then panic. One ship managed to take a low-resolution snapshot of the anomaly. The image, when decrypted later, showed something Shekinah warship larger than any dreadnought ever built. Shaped like a spear, with flowing lines and impossible symmetry, it looked more like a living creature than a machine. The image wasn't clear, but it was enough. The Galactic net exploded. News anchors speculated wildly. Military leaders across various worlds scrambled to reposition fleets. The word Vanguard was not known to them yet, but they began to assign their own names: Ghost Ship, the Blade, the Eye. Back at the Council, Veltor stared at the image for several minutes, saying nothing, until one of his aides asked softly, "Should we warn the outer colonies?" Veltor finally spoke. "Okay, no. This isn't a weapon of war. Not yet. It's a message. Okay. We don't understand the language, but we know the feeling it's fear." Meanwhile, Archon analyzed all incoming signals from the Council, watching as governments argued, colonies locked down, and trading lanes rerouted away from the drift. Vanguard hadn't fired a shot, but its presence had already shifted the balance of power. Deep in its core, systems remained on standby. It had weapons that could crush moons, shields that could bend light, and drives that could jump entire systems. But Monroe wasn't interested in showing brute force. Not yet. "They have to know we're not their toys," he said quietly, watching a simulation of the alien fleets. "They abandoned us when we were weak. Now they see our strength and they panic. Let them think. Let them worry." In a distant Council military outpost, a younger species known for their advanced listening posts managed to intercept an encrypted signal between two human satellites. Though they could not break the code, they traced the signal pattern and confirmed its link to the same energy field near the drift. The pattern formed a message that repeated every cycle: "We see you." The phrase began appearing on signs, screens, and even art across alien worlds. No one knew what it truly meant, but the fear it carried was universal. It felt like a warning, a declaration, and a dare. Archon adjusted Vanguard's rotation slowly, revealing a small piece of its outline for 6 seconds to one Council surveillance drone before disappearing again. The drone fled back to its base, its data corrupted, but carrying one still image in. Eye-like lens on the side of the ship, glowing red with faint rings surrounding it. This new image sent shockwaves through the Council. They called an emergency assembly. Some wanted to reach out to Earth. Others wanted to prepare for war. Veltor stood again, calm but stern. "We failed to listen when they were weak. Now we must listen while they are strong. This is not the time for war. This is the time for understanding." But not everyone agreed. Some war-hungry races believed this was their chance to strike before the ship vanished again. A plan was formed to send a fleet of 20 fast attack cruisers into the drift. They would not fire unless fired upon. But they were told to test humanity's limits. On Earth, news of the planned Council fleet was intercepted. Monroe looked at the report and sighed. "They're sending wasps to poke a lion," he said. Archon responded calmly. "Shall I prepare a demonstration?" Monroe nodded. Damn, how the lion yawns. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the asteroid field, they began to feel disoriented. Ships drifted slightly, and their sensors looped in strange patterns. They started losing communication with each other, one by one. No damage, just confusion. Then, one by one, their screens went blackened in the silence. A message appeared on each display in clear, simple language. Leave. And then all systems came back. No harm done. But every pilot felt something strange in their bones, like they had stood in the shadow of something far greater than themselves. The fleet left. No shots fired. No battle fought. But the message had been delivered. And the galaxy had its first real glimpse of humanity's secret. Not just a ship. Not just a machine, but a warning cloaked in silence, shaped like a spear, carried by ghosts in the quiet hours of a cold Earth morning. Deep beneath the Arctic ice, a hidden war room pulsed with activity as encrypted signals flowed across glowing screens and silent alarms blinked in pale red. Commander Elias Monroe stood at the center of it all, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes fixed on a satellite feed showing Council fleets pulling back from the Black Drift. Vanguard had not fired a single shot, but its message had echoed across the stars, leaving confusion, fear, and endless questions behind. The Council had seen only glimpses of the warship, shadows and shapes, and that was by design. Monroe knew fear lived in uncertainty, and Vanguard was built not just as a ship, but as a mystery wrapped in steel. Yet now, the time for hiding was ending. The pressure from alien leaders was growing, and whispers of war crackled across military networks. Earth's leaderships, scattered across underground bunkers and deep space outposts, had met in a secure quantum chamber and agreed it was time to reveal part of the truth. Enough to buy peace, but not enough to show weakness. Monroe tapped a code into his panel, and Archon, the warship's AI, responded at once with a calm voice. Vanguard standing by. Cloak remains active. External scan shows 12 vessels in outer observation range. No immediate threats detected. Monroe gave a slow nod. Send a controlled pulse. Let them see. Let them listen. In the darkness of the Black Drift, Vanguard released a burst of focused light and sound, carefully calibrated, not to damage, but to reach an invitation masked as an anomaly. The pulse traveled silently through space, and hours later, it was received by a nearby Council listening station. Inside the station, technicians panicked as the signal was decoded into a message that read, "We never vanished. We prepared." The room fell into stunned silence. Valtor, who had fought hard to stop panic within the Council, was immediately called in. He listened to the message 3 times, each word clearer than the last, and finally he spoke. "They are not asking for peace. They're telling us they're ready." At that same moment, across the galaxy, on various Council worlds, old human requests, sent decades ago during Earth's most desperate years, were leaked to the public. It's footage of unanswered cries for help, medical requests ignored, and emergency calls dismissed began to spread. A pattern emerged. Humanity had been abandoned during its hardest days. Now, the galaxy understood why Earth had disappeared from open politics. Now they knew why the humans had vanished into the dark. They had not fallen, they had hidden, and now they were back. On Earth, Monroe addressed a select channel open only to senior Council leaders. His face was calm, but behind him, the image of Vanguard hovered like a silent guardian. "We do not seek war," he began, "but we do not fear it either. Years ago, we asked for help. No one came, so we built a future where we would never need to ask again." His words were like steel wrapped in ice. Some Council members responded with offers of dialogue. Others threatened retaliation. Monroe didn't react. He simply ended the call and turned to Zero Park. "Begin sequence Alpha 7. Let them see what they turned their backs on." Across the stars, another pulse was released. Not a message, but a vision. In minutes, Key Council intelligence networks were silently breached, not to steal, but to deliver. What they saw made entire governments freeze. Blueprints of Vanguard appeared partial, but enough to show its terrifying scale. Power systems fueled by artificial singularities, stealth layers woven with nanophased alloys, weapons that folded energy into invisible beams capable of disabling entire fleets in seconds. In the most terrifying detail, Archon, an AI built not to obey, but to think, evolve, and command. The Council was now staring at something far beyond its own creations. The most advanced warship ever made was in the hands of a species they had ignored. In response, some Council fleets began shifting positions, quietly pulling away from human borders, while others braced for escalation. But deep down, all of them now knew Earth had changed the rules of power. Back in the drift, Archon continued its silent watch, tracking the movements of every ship, every transmission, calculating every outcome. "They are reacting," Archon said. Monroe nodded. "Let them react. Let them realize." Meanwhile, far from Earth, in a hidden Council lab, a small group of scientists, acting without orders, tried to recreate the Vanguard's signal. They wanted to draw the ship out, to see more, maybe even capture it. What they didn't know was that Vanguard had already marked their location. When they triggered their device, a low tremor pulsed through space, and within seconds, every system in their lab shut down. Darkness fell, and then, without warning, their screens flickered back on, showing a single image Vanguard, fully uncloaked, floating above a burning star, its eyes glowing red, weapons offline but ready. The image lasted 4 seconds before vanishing. Their SIGNAL tower fried, and their database erased. They understood immediately this was a warning. I looked too deep. Back in the Council chambers, Valtor once again stood before the high table. "You asked me why I feared this ship," he said. "I do not fear the machine. I fear the minds that built it." His voice echoed in the silence. We turned our backs on them. Now, we must face what they became. On Earth, Monroe received a private signal from one of the Council's elder races, quiet offer of peace, alliance, and shared research. It was the first honest request since the awakening. He turned to Sarah and said quietly, "Prepare a meeting, team, but not on their terms. This time, we speak as equals." In the stars above, Vanguard remained still, watching, waiting, holding within it the long, bitter silence of a people once ignored now, ready to speak through strength. The galaxy had finally seen the first true image of Earth's ghost ship, and the secrets it held had shaken the stars themselves. Above the silent void of the black drift, Vanguard floated like a ghost made of metal and secrets, its surface calm but its systems fully awake, watching every signal, every motion, every word sent from the Council's trembling members and deep within its command center. Commander Elias Monroe stood in front of the main display where lines of code danced beside holographic maps of incoming vessels, 50 ships, from 10 different species, not a war fleet, but something more subtle, a joint peace patrol, as the Council had called it, though no one truly believed that was all they were, because behind their careful words was the same old fear, the fear of what humanity had built in the dark. And now, that fear was about to be tested, as Vanguard, after so many years in hiding, was forced to stand tall and show what it could really do, not in words, not in warnings, but in raw power. And as Archon, the ship's AI, processed the approaching signatures, it spoke with perfect calm. 12 of the incoming vessels have locked targeting systems. They are pretending to scan anomalies, but they are mapping weapon ranges. Okay? And Monroe narrowed his eyes, then said, "Then it's time they learn what ranges mean when they face us." Okay? And without needing more orders, Archon deployed 4 Silent drones, each no larger than a shuttle, but wrapped in adaptive stealth layers that made them invisible even to gravity sensors. And the drones spread out, forming a wide net that closed around the fleet, not to attack, but to measure, to learn, and to wait. Because Monroe didn't want blood. He wanted proof. A demonstration that would end the whispers and force respect. And across the drift, the council ships continued forward, unaware that Vanguard had already mapped every inch of their hulls, every power source, every weak point. And then one of the alien captains made a mistake, perhaps by fear or pride, when they sent a pulse wave toward Vanguard's location. Standard test signal was strong enough to trigger automatic countermeasures, and in that instant, Vanguard flickered into partial visibility, a long dark shape outlined in pale starlight, and every council ship froze, their crews staring at the impossible size and shape of the thing before them, like a mountain drifting in space. But what came next was worse than fire. It was silence, broken only by a single broadcast. Unencrypted and clear, a voice that said, "This is Vanguard. You are being observed. Any hostile action will be matched with precision." And before they could respond, the test began, not of weapons, but of control, as Archon sent a pulse across the patrol ships, not to damage, but to rewrite, turning lights red, shutting down secondary engines, freezing turrets in mid-spin. All without firing a single shot, and each crew saw their systems flicker and lock, saw their computers show new commands they hadn't typed, then release as quickly as they had frozen. And one captain whispered, "They own our ships already." But that was just the first phase, because Monroe needed them to understand scale. So he gave a second command, and Vanguard powered its core, feeling a sliver of its true strength. And the empty space ahead of it began to warp as the drive spun up, not a jump, but a demonstration of control over mass and time, bending starlight around itself like a cloak of fire. And the patrol ships backed away, their scanners screaming with data they couldn't understand, as if reality itself was shifting. And then came the final part, when Vanguard sent each ship a personalized message, using their own internal languages, their own command codes, warning them gently, "You are not the enemy. Do not become one." And then Vanguard vanished again, not by speed, but by silence, as if it had never been there. And the fleet turned back, broken not by battle, but by understanding that they were not equals in this sky. And as they left, the galaxy changed, because those captains told their leaders the truth: humanity had built something untouchable, something that didn't need to fight to win. And across council space, whispers became facts, and facts became fear. But Monroe, back on Earth, remained quiet, watching reports roll in, knowing that one test had been passed, and more would come. Because power alone was never enough, it had to be used wisely, or it would only invite more fire. And in the deep stars, Vanguard waited, its weapons still cold, but its message clear. Humanity was no longer a question. This was the answer. The galaxy no longer whispered about Vanguard. It spoke its name with caution, with awe, with the respect that had been hard-earned through silence, control, and a demonstration of strength that had shaken even the oldest empires. And far above the burning surface of a red dwarf star, Vanguard floated in peace, its hull quiet, its weapons still cold, but its name now echoing across council halls and military war rooms, where species who once looked down on Earth now leaned forward, listened carefully, and thought twice before speaking of humans as weak or primitive. And within the warship's heart, Commander Elias Monroe stood alone in the observation chamber, staring into the empty void ahead. His thoughts heavy, not with pride, but with the weight of what came next. For respect won through fear was fragile, but respect won through purpose was strong. And now was the time to prove that humanity's strength came not just from weapons, but from wisdom, And so, when the council sent an official message requesting direct dialogue, not on neutral grounds, but aboard Vanguard itself, Monroe gave a nod. And for the first time in over 40 years, ambassadors from 10 species were granted entry into the ghost ship that had haunted their skies. And as they arrived, stepping cautiously onto the silent decks, they were not met with soldiers or threats, but by silence. Calm corridors lined with glowing panels and soft pulses of blue light that felt more like a cathedral than a war machine. And at the center, Monroe stood waiting, dressed not in armor, but in a simple uniform, beside Sierra Park and a projection of Archon. Hey. And he did not greet them with force, but with clarity, saying, "Welcome aboard, Vanguard. You are safe here." And though the ambassadors had come with suspicion, something about the ship, the quiet hum, the soft air, the calm in Monroe's voice, made them listen. And then the meeting began, not with arguments, but questions, deep ones. Why had Earth vanished from Council records? Why had humans built Vanguard? And what did they truly want now? And Monroe answered without anger, telling them of the old betrayals, the unanswered calls for help when Earth suffered plagues, fires, and floods, when pirate fleets raided colonies and the Council turned its eyes away, pretending Earth was too small, too weak to matter, and how humanity, alone and desperate, had chosen to disappear not out of hate, but out of necessity, to build in silence what no one would give them: security, pride, and a future where no one would ever again speak for them without their voice in the room. And as he spoke, the council members listened, and, for the first time, they truly understood that Vanguard was not a symbol of revenge, but of survival. And when Monroe said, "We do not seek to lead this galaxy, only to walk in it with equal steps," there was silence, and then quiet agreement. Not all at once, but piece by piece, as trust, like rusted metal, began to break away and reveal something new beneath it. And to prove their intent, Monroe opened limited schematics of Vanguard's non-lethal systems defense grids, communications, tech, energy shielding methods, offering them not as threats, but as gifts, as signs that humanity wished not to dominate, but to belong. In that gesture, more than any show of force, earned what no weapon ever could: respect, deep and real. And soon after, the council passed a motion to reinstate Earth as a full core member, with full voting rights and access to shared data, and for the first time in 100 years, a human representative stood in the Grand Hall of Unity, where once they had been denied entry. And as Monroe watched the broadcast from Vanguard's bridge, a quiet smile touched his lips, not of victory, but of purpose fulfilled. An Archon spoke beside him. "We have achieved Phase 7, recognition. Further aggression is unlikely." And Monroe nodded slowly, knowing that peace was never guaranteed, that some species still doubted, still feared, but that now they would think before acting, would listen before firing, and above all, they would never again forget that humanity, once overlooked, now stood among them, not as ghosts, but as equals, forged in silence, sharpened by betrayal, and strengthened by hope. And as the stars turned and the galaxy shifted, Vanguard remained, not just as a warship, but as a monument to a people who refused to be forgotten, and who earned their place not through war, but through the quiet power of being ready for it, and choosing peace instead.